So this week's column is on a subject that I was hesitant about writing on and still feel slightly queasy about, because it's about immigration. And people on the centre left have been brought up to think that any discussion of immigration, and particularly of numbers, is inherently racist. And certainly all the way through my adult lifetime, there have been racist, apocalyptic warnings of what's about to happen, the people coming in next, we don't want this lot, we don't want that lot. And actually, far from there being rivers of blood, there have hardly even been pink-flecked streamlets. One of the great achievements, I think, of this country has been the level of successful, peaceful integration. And I would also say it's really important when we look at the numbers not to panic, because if you look at the percentage of people in this country who were born abroad, which is one measure of these things, it's 14%, which is more or less exactly the same as the United States, Spain, Italy, many other countries, Canada, and indeed places like Germany, most of Scandinavia, have a higher proportion of their citizens born abroad. So the level of immigration into this country, far from being unlikely or absurd or unique, is about what you would have expected for a country of this kind of wealth and with these kind of international connections, perhaps slightly less than you'd have expected. So there is no great issue. And you might say, okay, Andrew, well, in that case, why are you writing about this at all? And the answer is that if you look around the world, if you look at the effects of global warming, of war, of failed states, particularly in Africa and parts of Asia, then you can see there are a very, very large number of people who would like to be on the move and for the very first time could get to Western countries plausibly. I think the levels of immigration are going to keep rising quite fast. If you look at the official figures, an extra 10 million people in this country by 2050. That's less than 30 years away. And the purpose of this column is not to say pull up the drawbridge, stop them coming. First of all, because that's not possible. And second, because if it was possible, it would be very, very bad for us. We need these waves of new people with their energy and their enthusiasm to help keep building this country and stop us aging as a society. Now, something rather strange is happening on the Conservative side of politics and all of that, which is, again, they're ramping up the rhetoric. There was, I thought, a really terrible Robert Jenrick speech on illegal migration.
Excessive, uncontrolled migration threatens to cannibalise the compassion that marks out the British people.
Quickly followed up by Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary.
The people coming here illegally do possess values which are at odds with our country. We are seeing heightened levels of criminality when related to the people who have come on boats, related to drug dealing, exploitation, prostitution.
First of all, there is no evidence of that at all. If you look at the studies which have been done into links between criminality and migration, they find almost no links at all, either on a local or a national basis. Second, when you talk about values, what we do know about recent groups of immigrants is that they work very, very hard indeed, probably harder than the rest of us, and they tend to be a bit more religious and moral, perhaps, than the rest of us. So yes, they've got different values, but in that direction, not the other. Now, by sharpening the rhetoric around this and going for those very, very strong visual images, first of all, you have the rubber boats crunching up on the shingle on southeastern coasts and all those people coming out of them wearing their life vests and being greeted by officials. And then they hope by the time of the election, there'll be another series of images, which is the same people in manacles being pushed into planes, which then fly off to Rwanda or wherever. And they think this is really, really clever, and they think this kind of punch-in-the-mouth politics is what the British public wants. If they don't actually remove all those people, which I think is most unlikely, they'll be punished by the very voters they're going for. But second, by raising this big question of illegal migration across the Channel, they raise the bigger question still of mass migration, because under the Tories it has grown very fast indeed. Before the Brexit referendum, back in the old days when Theresa May was a humble Home Secretary, they had a migration of sort of 200,000 to 300,000 a year, and it was a huge crisis, and David Cameron kept promising he would reduce it to the tens of thousands, and he never did, and that was part of the story of Brexit. Well, last year, we had net migration of 500,000. That is expected to go down again because of the effects of Ukraine and so forth, and we'll be back down to a sort of figure, still a little bit before Brexit, but not that much before. But I think by raising the question of migration, I think the Tories are making a lot of voters say, OK, so why did this happen on your watch then? What was it about your regime that has led to such a huge influx of people, particularly from India and from Nigeria and other parts of Africa? Why? Now, the answer, I think, is that the right in politics have acquiesced in an economy where employers are able to suck in large numbers of low-paid but relatively energetic and relatively high-skilled workers from abroad. They don't like to talk about it, but that's what's been going on. And of course, on the left of politics, we don't like to talk about this stuff at all. So the public has not had the open and frank discussion of this subject that they might have expected. I think that might well rebound against the Tories rather than for them, but we'll see. If we're talking about another 10 million people by 2050, how are we going to absorb those people? Do we have the housing? Do we have the water supplies? Do we have the roads? Do we have the hospitals and doctors' surgeries and the schools that we are going to need if we're going to be a happy, successful country with that big bump in population? Now, I think in the end, the answer is probably yes. We are not full up. We're a very, very densely populated country by the standards certainly of France or Germany, but we're certainly not full up either. There is space. What there is not is the services and the infrastructure to absorb that number of people. And I think until the centre-left in particular starts an honest conversation with the voters, then we are not going to be able to build the houses and the roads and the infrastructure that we are really going to need in the measurable future. And if it's only 30 years ago, we have to start now. So that's the point of the column. Now, as it happens, the Labour Party has made some big announcements on housing. They're going to put back the 300,000 per year target that was taken away by the Tories because they were too frightened of their local NIMBY MPs. That's really important. There's going to be a special charter for people renting. The rental sector is broken. There needs to be a great deal more social housing. So they're saying all the right things at the moment, the Labour Party, and clearly Keir Starmer sees this as one of the big routes to growth. I think they should go a little bit further. I would like to see an announcement of a whole new generation of new towns, what you might call new towns, because the last lot have by and large worked very effectively. But these need to be environmentally sound, eco-new towns. We need to use some of the superb generation of young architects around the UK to design them and build them. And we need to be able, before the election, to envisage them, to see them, to think about where they're going to be, and to know that they're going to have parks and theatres and cinemas and pubs and shops and all the things that we need to lead a decent life. So this is really a plea for a bigger offer, a bigger sense of imagination when it comes to the rebuilding project that this country needs. More hospitals, more surgeries, more roads, more housing, more schools. Because given the size of the population increase that we must now expect, we are really going to need it. If you'd like to stay up to date and you'd like to see the latest explainers, field reports, feature stories and special discussion episodes, then please, folks, subscribe to our channel today.